On behalf of the EFDD, I give the floor to Mr. Farage.
Thank you. Imagine you invited a very important guest round for dinner, and you made all the preparations, and there were some very important confidential conversations that needed to be had, and you thought everything had gone well, and yet within hours your guest had told the outside world that you, the host, were deluded, that you were living in a different galaxy. And then all the contents of the conversation were blabbed to an opposition newspaper, and to add insult to injury, you say the food wasn't actually very good either. And then a few days later, in a display of extreme petulance, you even deride the national language of the host, which, by the way, is looking a bit silly, because last Saturday's extravaganza, known as the Eurovision Song Contest, saw 90% of the songs sung in English. Now, if you were the host and you'd been treated like that by somebody that you thought was important and somebody you thought you could trust, I think you'd be asking yourself, were you dealing with a reasonable person? Now, I don't know, Mr. Juncker, whether this is how you carry on in Luxembourg. I doubt it, because in any other part of the civilised world, frankly, that behaviour would be considered to be bloody rude and the act of a bully. Well, I'll tell you something. Your attempt to bully the Brits through this negotiation is not working. 68% now of the British people want Brexit to happen. And all of that on top of a ludicrous ransom that Monsieur Barnier wants, that I'm told has now doubled to €100 billion. Either we get some grown-up, reasonable demands from the European Union, or the United Kingdom will be forced to walk away before the end of this year. We can't spend 2 years with this farce. There is a big, big world out there, and I'm beginning to think that perhaps, I very rarely agree with Marxists, but perhaps Mr. Varoufakis is right when he says about negotiating with the EU, it is a technocracy that is desperately clinging on to its own exorbitant and illegitimate power. You may have crushed Greek democracy 2 years ago. You ain't going to do it to us.